Travellers face £1,750 cost for England quarantine hotels. Travellers having to stay in quarantine hotels in England will be charged £1,750 for their stay, Health Secretary Matt Hancock has announced. The measures, which come into force on Monday, apply to UK and Irish residents returning from 33 red list countries. Those who fail to quarantine in a government-sanctioned hotel for 10 days face fines of up to £10,000. Meanwhile, all travellers arriving into Scotland from abroad by air will have to go into quarantine hotels. People travelling from red list countries to Wales and Northern Ireland will be required to book and pay for quarantine in England, as neither destination currently has any direct international flights. Travellers arriving into England who lie on their passenger locator forms about visiting a red list country face a fine of £10,000 or up to 10 years in jail. It comes as the UK reported another 12,364 confirmed cases of coronavirus and a further 1,052 deaths within 28 days of a positive test, bringing that total to 113,850. More than 12.6 million people have received a first dose of the vaccine. Delivering a statement in the Commons, Mr. Hancock said 16 hotels have been contracted for the programme, with 4,600 rooms secured. The Health Secretary also confirmed a new encharted test regime for all travellers arriving in the UK would begin on Monday, with 2 tests required during the quarantine process. They will be required to get a test on days 2 and 8 of their 10-day quarantine period, whether they are isolating at home or in a hotel. The tests conducted by NHS Test and Trace will cost travellers £210. People who flout these rules are putting us all at risk, the Health Secretary told MPs. Airlines and travel companies will be legally required to make sure travellers have signed up for the new measures before they depart. Fines with companies, passengers, and if they fail to comply, he said. The penalties include a £1,000 fine for travellers who fail to take mandatory tests and a £2,000 fine for failing to take the second mandatory test, along with a 14-day extension to quarantine. Failing to quarantine is a designated hotel carries a fine of between £5,000 and £10,000. Asked when travel rules would be relaxed, Mr. Hancock said, "We would to exit from into a system of safe international travel as soon as practical and as soon as it is safe." Passengers required to stay in a quarantine hotel will need to reserve a room online in advance using a booking system that opens on Thursday. The £1,750 fee for an individual includes the hotel, the cost of transport and testing. The additional rate for one extra adult or child aged over 12 is £650, and for a child aged 5 to 12 it is £325. These travellers will only be allowed to enter the UK through a small number of ports that currently account for the vast majority of passengers' arrivals, Mr. Hancock added. Responding to Mr. Hancock's statement, Labour's Shadow Health Secretary said the public wanted the government to go further on border quarantine measures. Jonathan Ashworth told the Commons, "Our first line of defence is surely to do everything we can to stop new variants arising in the first place. That means securing our borders to isolate variants as they come in." He's also announced a detailed package today, but he hasn't announced comprehensive quarantine controls at the borders. Mr. Hancock later said that the red list was kept under review, announcing Scotland's tougher measures which apply to arrivals from all countries. Scottish Transport Secretary Michael Matheson said that targeted reactive approach of the UK government was no longer sufficient to deal with the threat from coronavirus. Welsh First Minister Mark Drakeford said he also wanted to see a strong set of defences at our borders and said that the UK government measures were the bare minimum of what needs to be done. Enforcement fines and prison sentences over quarantine breaches are still under review in Wales. A Welsh government spokesman also said the country was working to determine when it will need its own quarantine hotels. If the red list expands or if international flights resume, although the 4,600 rooms secured so far in England would only allow for around one Boeing 747's worth of passengers per day. Kate Nichols, Chief Executive of UK Hospitality, said discussions were underway to add more capacity. She told BBC Radio's 4 World at one of the separate security teams contracted by the government would be responsible for enforcing the quarantine, while hotel staff focusing on giving people the best possible experience in what are very difficult circumstances. The £1,750 fee includes 3 meals, tea, coffee and water, Ms. Nichols said, but other items will be available at extra cost through the room. The coronavirus in the UK death total is 113,850. That's the latest figure. Total cases 3,972,148. People in hospital 26,723. Change on the day. Okay, publication dates differ by nation. Travellers arriving in the UK, whether by boat, train or plane, are already required to show proof of a negative COVID test to be allowed entry. The test must be taken 72 hours before travelling and arriving without facing one of the fines of £500, with Border Force officials carrying out spot checks. They must also provide contact details in the UK and their UK address. They can travel by public transport if necessary to the place where they plan to self-isolate. All travellers, including British nationals, must self-isolate for 10 days when they get to the UK. The test to release scheme, where travellers from non-red list countries leave home isolation after a negative test on day 5, will remain under the new testing rules. Passengers will be expected to use the gold standard and more expensive PCR tests. Lockdown rule means people must only travel abroad for essential reasons. These are the same as reasonable excuses for domestic travelling, including work that cannot be done from home, medical appointments, educational reasons. People leaving England will soon have to make a declaration on why they need to travel, which will be checked and carried by carriers prior to departure. The new measures come after England's Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Professor Jonathan Van Tam, warned it was too soon to say to what extent people could begin to start planning summer holidays. Speaking at Monday's Downing Street coronavirus briefing, he said the more elaborate your plans are for summer holidays in terms of crossing borders, in terms of household mixing, given where we are now, I think we just have to say the more you are stepping into making guesses about the unknown at this point, he said. I can't give people a proper answer at this point because we don't yet have the data. It is just too early to say. After the announcement of the travel rules aimed at preventing the spread of new variants of coronavirus, government advisors designated another variant of concern, a version of the virus which was revealed last week to have been found in Bristol. Now the countries which are where you cannot travel. What the travel ban is for. Okay, so travel bans to the UK. If you have been in or through any of these countries listed below in the last 10 days, you will be refused entry to the UK. The list of countries sometimes referred to as the Red List. British and Irish nationals on third country nationals with residence rights in the UK will be able to enter the UK. They must self-isolate for 10 days on the arrival, along with their household. They cannot use the test to release scheme. Angola, Argentina, Bolivia, Botswana, Brazil, Burundi, Cape Verde, Chile, Colombia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ecuador, Eswatini, French Guyana, Lesotho, Malawi, Mauritius, Mozambique, Namibia, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Portugal, including Madeira and the Azores, Rwanda, Seychelles, South Africa, Suriname, Tanzania, United Arab Emirates, UAE, Uruguay, Venezuela, Zambia, and Zimbabwe.